Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has confirmed that 8 people have been detained on suspicion of preparing sabotage across Poland, part of what officials describe as a Russian-led hybrid war. Authorities say some suspects planned to send explosive packages through Poland and Romania to Ukraine, and more than 55 arrests have been made in recent months. Joining me to discuss the security and geopolitical implications is Professor Jakub Godzimirski from the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. Professor, welcome to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Good evening.
Good evening. So before we start, there's a short soundbite that I would like to share with you and the audience, and then I'll get your view on it.
Officers of the Internal Security Agency, but not only them because it was a wide-ranging operation, detained 8 people. What is extremely important, in recent months, officers of the Internal Security Agency detained a total of 55 people who acted to the detriment of Poland and acted on behalf of Russian intelligence.
Okay, 55 arrests, 8 only very recently. What do you make of the scale of what's happening?
This is not very surprising. We must understand that Russia is interested in gathering intelligence information in areas that they consider important from their strategic point of view. So they have mobilized various types of actors to provide them with this information. For the time being, we know not that much about those people involved. Some Ukrainian participants of this network were mentioned in the Polish media and international coverage of this case, but that Ukrainians are involved is not surprising neither, because already in 2023 a similar network was somehow revealed in Poland, and several people were arrested and sentenced to some years of prison for this activity on behalf of the Russian intelligence service. So yes, this is not very surprising, nothing new. We have seen that many countries in Europe decided to throw several Russian embassy officials in connection with this type of suspicions.
Understood. I want to get to the other countries in just a minute, but I want to focus on Poland first. Now, yes, it's nothing new as a concept, but this is much more than simply espionage for the sake of gathering information. This is destructive. This is, blowing things up, sending parcel bombs and so on. Have you seen an evolution in this kind of hybrid warfare by Russia?
Of course, there has been an evolution. We have to go back to the year 2013 when the then head of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov, published his article about the new generation warfare, where he outlines the objectives and the measures Russia is to take in confrontation with what they consider to be the country's enemies on the international stage. So this is nothing new. There has been a kind of escalation ladder in this context as well. We know, for instance, only 1 week ago, The Economist published a lengthy article about Russia's so-called gray zone operations in Europe, where Poland is also mentioned as one of the key target countries for this type of operations. Why Poland? Poland is an important element of this strategic puzzle that Russia has to deal with in connection with the war, with the ongoing war in Ukraine, because Poland is a kind of important transport hub and a country that has a very long border with Ukraine. So what we have seen is a part of the Russian repertoire of power, meaning the use of various types of instruments they have at their disposal in order to promote their interests and inflict some damage to those whom they consider to be the enemies of this country.
How would you characterize this? Would you characterize this as war?
This is a typical gray zone area. This child has many interesting names: economic warfare, political warfare, gray zone operations, active measures are always, and not least hybrid warfare, are always mentioned in this in the context of this type of operations. There are several so-called power practices a country can use. This is always a combination of various instruments of power a country has at its disposal. To start with, we can talk about diplomatic, information-related, economic and military instruments of power that any country has at its disposal in order to pursue its objectives on the international stage. And Russia has been using this type of instruments of power consistently since the very beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine, trying to influence the policies of other players on the international stage.
Well, you mention other players on the international stage. Of course, the UK comes to mind, Estonia, and others have all experienced some form of hybrid warfare. What is the goal that Russia is expecting to achieve by doing this?
The goal Russia is seeking to achieve is to somehow sow more discord in Europe, try to undermine the coherence of the Western support to Ukraine, trying to spread fear. Some years ago, our colleagues from the Center of Eastern Studies in Warsaw published a very interesting study on what is the most important export from Russia, and they meant that spreading fear is the most important export good Russia is trying to export, trying to influence the policies of other countries by making them fear Russia. So this is nothing new, but what we must do in order to cope with this type of challenges is to increase the level of societal and national resilience, which is not an easy task in the current situation.
Well, you say it isn't easy. How well is Europe doing, and how well in particular is Poland doing in combating this? I mean, this is not new, as you say. It started, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's been going on for 3.5 years. How well has Europe responded, and in particular Poland?
There is a very steep learning curve in both Europe and in Poland. We understand this type of operations are not necessarily connected only with the outbreak of the full-scale war. Already in 2014, when Russia decided to annex Crimea, they launched a huge, massive kind of disinformation campaign, which is also a part of this kind of gray zone type of operations. And we have learned how to cope with this type of challenges ever since. There are some successes, for instance, the fact that the Polish intelligence community has managed to identify members of this network, both in 2023, but also nowadays is a very good example of how successful one can be. But we should not have any kind of doubts that there are other groups operating on behalf of Russia. Russia has embarked on a rather innovative approach to this type of operations. They try to mobilize so-called proxy actors, among millions of Ukrainian and other refugees in Western Europe, and including in Poland. Those people are being contacted by Russian intelligence operators via Telegram and other communication channels more directly. So this makes this whole issue of identifying who is working for Russia more of a challenge. But still, we have seen that intelligence communities in Europe have managed to deal with those questions, not least by throwing hundreds of Russian diplomats from European countries over the past 3-4 years.
Well, diplomats are one thing, Professor, but monitoring social media, of course, is quite another. What is it that the Polish security services and other European countries' security services could do better?
What we could do better is to make our populations more aware of this type of challenges, to monitor the media that can influence opinion. What is also a topic that needs to be somehow understood in the Polish context is that in a polarized society, and the Polish society is very strongly polarized over the past 15 years, it's much easier to somehow spread lies and disinformation. So the issue of polarization of the Polish society needs to be addressed in order to make Poland better prepared to cope with this type of challenges. So some years ago, in connection with the project that we conducted together with the Romanian think tank, we conducted public opinion surveys in both Poland, in Romania, and in Norway. And what was revealed by those public opinion surveys was that, for instance, in a country like Norway, the level of trust to the state and its institutions is very high, while in countries like Romania and Poland, the level of trust to state institutions is relatively low. And on top of that, there is this huge polarization of the Polish society, which opens for some actions as well aimed at various groups of the Polish society that either are viewed as less inclined to provide support to Ukraine in this war, or somehow are suspected of working even closer with supporting Russian interests.
Understood. Unfortunately, Professor, we're going to have to end it there, but thank you very much indeed for your analysis of the situation. Come and see us again soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
See you on the next occasion.
Look forward to it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, though. News coming right up. Bye for now.